Hey, Leilani with the Magical Solution here. So this is part 2 of tips for readers and Espiritistas, beginner and advanced. All right. So we're on tip number 5. If you don't know what I'm referring to, please go back to the first video attached to this comment here for context. So another piece of this story that you need to know is that even after seeing all of these readers and going to all these misas, the client still offered more information about her partner and said, look, you're wrong. What you're experiencing is absolutely the case of the way he was when he was in real life. Like, you think he's a great spirit. He's not. You think nothing is happening. You think that I'm not going through this. I am. And even with the explanations, even with the backstories, the readers and the Misa participants didn't believe her. And this right here is tip number 5. We are so caught up in the validation, verification, confirmation, grounding in our divination and in our mediumship, as we should be, right? This is part of our spiritual practice. It's a deep, important piece of our spiritual practice. Of course we have to have faith in it. Of course we have to rely on it and refer to it and defer to it, of course. But no one said to throw your logic out the goddamn window, all right? Just because we hold divination and we hold mediumship to a very high degree does not mean that that is the end all be all. And I'm sorry. I get that many religions out there, many codified spiritual practices out there, many traditions out there hold a diviner and or the spirits of divination to the highest degree, and the divination system that is attached to that spirit and or to the diviner themselves is held at the highest degree. We understand that, we respect that, but at the end of the day, if a client is expressing a lived experience, whether you believe it or not, whether you have feelings about it or not, bitch, it ain't about you, and you need to believe it. You need to believe it. And if your divination system is telling you one thing, but your ego is telling you the other, you need to step back and relook at the whole situation. Okay? Because it's so easy to say, the divination is right 100% of the time. Or the divination says this, but I'm going to say this because I believe this is what it is. One of the hardest parts about being a survivor of narcissistic abuse and or domestic violence, any kind of relationship abuse, honestly, one of the hardest parts of the recovery process is being able to trust yourself again. And one of the biggest determinants of people regaining trust within themselves again is when they can trust others and when they can be trusted by others, right? So it is that communal validation that allows people to heal. And there's nothing more disheartening than going to a spiritual advisor that you trust and they don't believe you. So tip number 5, believe your clients. Believe them first until they give you reason, or until the divination, or until things get unveiled that give you reason to not believe them anymore. And I know that that's a tough pill to swallow, because this now becomes a mutual trust situation. And just like relationships, just like partnerships, You can get your heart broken. Your trust can get taken advantage of. People can fuck you over. Absolutely. It's all up for possibility. But part of our job is to not be afraid of that. Part of our job is to bounce back. Part of our job is to put out that hand at the risk of the whole arm being ripped off. Okay? Because in the few and rare instances where you are wrong, it will never outweigh all of the times that you were right. Okay? So, boom, believe your clients. That's number 5. Number 6 has more to do with the ego of the reader. But there's something to be said about the power that you hold as a reader, as an espiritista, as a spiritual advisor. Because let's be for real. Usually when clients come to you with a case, it's usually because you're a last resort. They've been through the legal system. They've been through the medical system. They've been through friends and family. They have been through community resources. They are at the end of their rope. They don't know who to turn to. They found your name in some listing, and here they are, right? That right there is a level of desperation, a level of trust, a level of power that is already, from the beginning, disproportionate. So it is your obligation, it is your job to not abuse that power. And by not abusing it in this specific case, right? Because I'm only kind of using this case as an example. We can apply this, all these rules, all these tips that I gave in these last 2 videos can be applied to literally anything. But in this specific case, the abuse was take this woman's money, tell her everything is fine and that it's all in her head. Fix it. Fix it. Because the last thing any of us need is a client that's coming to us with a problem that has all these nuances, all these layers that we just talked about. And then on top of that, the wounds and distrust of previous spiritual advisors now being projected onto you. And now you're dealing with doubt. You're dealing with, someone who is on the brink of losing faith. You're dealing with hopelessness. And when I tell you some of the hardest cases to deal with are only hard because hopelessness has snuck in. If that one little factor wasn't a factor, there is no case that can't be solved. There's no case that can't be addressed. But the minute that hopelessness sneaks its ugly little face into this bitch, you are now trying to move mountains at this point. So my advice to you readers is do not take on more than you can chew simply because your ego is on something. If something is truly out of the realm of your capabilities, if you are reading on a specific spirit and that specific spirit is giving you one type of personality, but somewhere in your center it's not right, but you can't put your finger on it, you can't place it accurately, say that. Because it does not make you a bad espiritista. It does not make you anything other than an ethical, honest person who is not abusing the power dynamics and who is looking out for the interests of the client because they know they are not the best person for the job. That's number 6. Simple as that. So look, I can go on forever regarding tips, especially tips that I would have wanted to know when I was first starting out. But I'm not going to bore you with all of that. I just hope that you walk away from this video and the previous video knowing that our job is way bigger than just reading a bunch of cards, okay? We are a field of study and a professional field that should be taken seriously. We hold people's lives in our hands. We hold people's spirits in our hands. And we need to get tighter at how we perform our job and how we can do it ethically. So if you guys have any ideas, if you have tips, if you have stories and case studies that you want to compare, I would love to hear them. So drop me a comment, make a stitch, but most importantly, subscribe. Thanks so much. Leilani with the Magical Solution here. This is how we grow.